Okay, so this is part two. Let's recap on part one. We did have all the device ID in our laptop. We have created the bootable flash drive with Catalina 15.5 installer and OpenCore and Clover bootloader. So in part two, we kind of try to understand the bootloaders, what makes it bootable, and how to install it correctly, how to set up the config file, how to get all the files into the right folders for both OpenCore and Clover. We need these two because sometimes our laptop works with one better than the other. So it's good to have choices. When we go to the main BIOS, we need to write down the UUID number. We go to configuration, virtual technology, we turn it off, and we turn the secure boot to off and legacy support to on. So enable that. Go to secure boot, and then we're gonna go to secure boot and enable. What we're gonna do is gonna uncheck this one. And are you sure? Yes. Click apply. Click OK. Advanced boot option. Okay. We're going to turn on the enable legacy ROM. We click apply. Click OK. So now we're going to exit. We're going to go to. Oh, we need to get to the BIOS. It's F10 for the HP. Secure boot disable and legacy support enable. Okay, we need to have that. So it's a UUID. This one you need to copy down and keep it. Most of the EFI folders are very small, so I recommend to reformat and set up a new Windows. A lot of people worry about all of the backed up of the Windows. The Windows 10 is always available to re-download. So all the drivers are always there. So don't worry about deleting everything and reformat and create a new Windows 10. And I have a tutorial on how to set it up. Okay, so now we need to format, create a partition for Catalina. So what we need to do, we go to Control Panel, Administrative Tools, Computer Management. We want to go to Storage, Disk Management. We need to shrink a partition. I think Windows only let you to shrink 50%, but you can use mini partition to shrink 60 or 70% for Mac OS. So this one is unallocated. So we're gonna configure it, make a simple volume. So we do NTFS or whatever. It doesn't really matter because we're gonna have to format it to APS anyway. So we're gonna do it SSD Pro 132. So we're gonna use the MacBook Pro 113.2. Now we're going to reboot. Now we're going to configure the OpenCore and Clover to boot. We will need to install it on the external. Okay, so now if we open
the EFI folder. So let's go to the Clover. Now, Kexts. They have other, we need to put all the Kexts in here that is needed. I'm going to explain about what I understand of these Kexts, which is like a driver for the Hackintosh. So ACPI, this is a Clover, okay, which is different from OpenCore. ACPI battery management is that it will show with this and a patch battery, it will show you the battery percentage. Is it charging or not? Okay. The AHCI port injector. Some of the BIOS does not have the AHCI port for you to configure. So this one will inject the AHCI. Mac OS need the AHCI. The Apple ALC is the one that is going to give you the driver, the internal audio, if it's supported. The fake SMC is the most important one. It's just the system. Without this, then the operating system doesn't know your hardware. Lilu.kex is the one that will make the ACPI, all of the power management. It go in with the whatever green. So whatever green and Lilu will make sure that your graphic card is configured correctly. They give you the buffer, frame buffer driver to display full acceleration. So you need these two for very important right now. You also need the USB inject all because your laptop has many USB. So this one will configure all the USB 2.0 or 3.0, which one go where and how much power they put. Is it chargeable? Voodoo PS2 controller Kex from Rehab Man. This one is your trackpad. So without a trackpad, it will act as mouse and keyboard, or it won't even work because it's internal. Just like the Dell last time I looked at it, the trackpad is not supported. So you have to use external USB keyboard and mouse. That's too much work. So this one is for your trackpad and keyboard. Synaptics is always the one. Let's look at other. When you use the Apple ALC, you need a codec commander that Kexts. So this one, every time you wake up, put it to sleep and it wakes up, it will come back to the original state before sleeping. Bluetooth, audio, microphone. So if the codec commander is not configured correctly or it's not working, when you wake up, you have no Bluetooth, or your sound is gone, or your microphone doesn't work. So codec commander is for the sound. Why do I have this Bluetooth injector? These are for the Broadcom Bluetooth. And if I use the Wi-Fi, I also need to have airport fixup.kex for the Wi-Fi to work with the Broadcom. So these three right here are for the Bluetooth Broadcom. And with these three, you can have the Bluetooth that support handoff support, AirDrop. So let's look at this. I'm going to beam something to this. Accept. So I just sent over a picture. There you go. So that's called the handoff support. Why do I recommend every time you had a laptop, replace it with the 1820 DW1820A or DW1560 because that module will be the same, will be supported internally for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Why do I have the NVMe fix.kex? This one is the new SSD now. They have the NVMe. So this one will make sure that your laptop will communicate with NVMe correctly. So this is called the Kexts folder or the driver folder for all your components that's needed for Hackintosh. Is that Clover, drivers, UEFI. So they put everything in here already for you when you do the BDU. But there's two files that you need that is not in there, which you need to download. So it's called the HFS Plus and NDTFS. Also, if you're going to use the NVMe hard drive, you need this one also. You may need this one too. Let's bring them over. Now you have all of this, so it's ready for the driver to boot. See, now they don't have the ACPI anymore. The theme, what do they have? They have no theme. So you need to get some theme. We should download the zip file. So now if you go to download and if you go to the zip file and you go to the theme, you should have everything in there. Just use these three is okay. So bring it over, put it into the theme. One thing you don't see here is the ACPI.
ACPI folder, which is very important. So with Clover, inside the ACPI folder, you have to create a folder called patch folder. Inside the patch folder, you will list all of your SSDT and DSDT. Now, after you install the Catalina, you have to patch these to make sure that they compilable. So for now, you don't need any of these. But what you do need, because of the Catalina, what you do need is the SSDT-AC laptop.aml. This one is to ensure that Catalina will see the embedded controller as EC. Or you need this one. So these two you can download from OpenCore. You need the SSDT plug. This one is a plug-in type 1. This is the power management generic for all of the new laptop working with lilu.kex and whatever green. So you can download this one, search for it, or you can use the SSDT plug-in type 1, which is the old one from RehabMan. It's also work. These all the one with the plug is the power management. You need an SSDT PNLF for the brightness. When you're done, you have to patch your USB port. So I have a tutorial on how to use RehabBand SSDT UIAC all.aml. You can configure, customize it to your laptop. So this is how the Catalina will base on this and apply the power to your USB ports. But since you don't have this one yet, you can just use the generic one, which is the SSDT-USBX.AML. This one is also an OpenCore, I think, created this one. When you first boot, you need power for the USB. You have the power management for your laptop. You have the EC, fake EC, so that Catalina will install. So you need these three files minimum. PNLF is for the backlight config file. So the config file just to list all of your files that you put on the ACPI and the Kexts folder. The config file will list all of your files that in the ACPI and Kexts folder. It also contains the SM BIOS, which tell the Catalina which MacBook hardware that it's using, so Catalina can inject all of the correct um, feature onto the SM BIOS. So the DSDT, from the beginning, you don't have it patched, so you don't drop the OEM. Then all the fixes that I put there and the patches. So the patches on this one, because since we don't know, we just patch them all because Catalina need embedded controller to be EC. So after we install, then we can find out which embedded controller we have and patch particularly.
With Catalina, you have to change everything to EC. It's for embedded controller. So if you look for PNP 0C09. So now my device here is EC0 on this laptop. Other laptop can be H underscore EC. So you don't know which system you have.
The SSDT is the power management. So this one, since we don't have anything, we drop OEM is also no. And we use a plug-in type 1, which is a power management. And the SSDT we need is just a PNLF, which is the brightness. We're going to use the plug is for the power management. And we use the EC or ECU SBX. That one is for the embedded controller with the USB power. And the final one we need is a USB X for the power for the USB. So those four files we need to get this running. So when you boot, on the boot, it's just an argument. Make sure you have the -V is for verbose. Verbose, when it's boot, it will show all the devices that is failing. When we get the device ID for the graphic cards, the hex number of the ID is the one we're going to use to boot with the system. So that's why it's important to know what device ID you have for the graphic card. So with Clover, we use it as the IG platform ID for the graphic. With the kernel and Kext patching, we only need to use this when we finish installing. So on my sample config, I already have it patched the minimal so that it will boot correctly. It provided that you have the correct IG platform ID for the graphic card. There are four important patches for the USB ports. That is from the PM heart for Clover. So we use that. It's already in the config file that I'm going to put on my website.
Without the PNLF, you don't have this brightness scale to move up and down. And plug-in type 1, or you can use plug, which you can search on the internet. This one will give you the power management system, which is the same as this. Alright? Speed steps and everything. The last one you want is the USB power for your laptop. This one you have to patch. So you can patch UIAC from RehabMan to do exactly the same to fit to your USB port on this laptop. Now, since you don't have this one made yet, you can use the USB X instead of this one. Then it will give you the power on the USB. But right now, what you want to do is to boot and install the Catalina first before we do anything else. That one will be, it's called post installation. That means after installation. Okay? So this is the Clover. You can just inject the platform ID correctly, then it will boot nicely. All the new Catalina, you don't need to inject Intel. So you don't need to inject any. So if you do the graphic platform ID correctly, Lilu and whatever green, make sure that you have the full acceleration, which is the NVRAM, have to be 1.5 gig. Then the next one you have is called system parameters, only on the Clover. This is a custom UUID. This is the one that you get from the laptop BIOS. That is your unique laptop identification. RT variable. This is the one. So the booter config and the 67, you should turn the security off on the system. MLB, this is a 17 digit for your laptop, and the ROM here, it has to be unique. So it has to be your MAC address of your internal EN0, which is Ethernet or whatever the EN0 is. So if you have Ethernet that is supported, you use a MAC ID of that. So now this one right here, the internal EN0 is the internal built-in, is true. So I use a MAC address of this one. So you can get the MAC address from Windows also. So this is the MAC address. And finally is a SM BIOS, which tell the operating system that this is MacBook Pro. And it has serial number. And when you have the serial number that you make it up, or whatever it is, you need to check with Apple to see that it's not a real serial number that's already registered. So this one to ensure that you will have iMessage and FaceTime. problem is that right now you don't have Xcode, then you'll use a text base like in the Windows. So you can use like, I don't know, Notepad plus plus, and everything else is in the number here are in base 64. So you have to convert all the hacks to base 64, but I'm going to put my config file for you to at least to get it working. Okay, so now let's look at the OpenCore bootloader. So OpenCore bootloader, they also have the ACPI, but inside there you don't need to put a patch folder. So you just put everything inside there. Same as the Clover. All the files is the same. When you extract it from the OC, you should have all of these except NTFS and HFS plus. None of these have it. Then they have a Kexts folder, which doesn't have the other folder inside the Kexts folder. They just put everything in here. So same thing. The virtual SMC instead of fake SMC like Clover. It's the same thing, but it's different for different operating system. They use SMC battery management.kex, which is different from ACPI battery management.kex from Clover. Okay, I don't really care about this one. They use SMC processor. They use the I/O, and now they also have their own Voodoo PS2 controller Kex, which is version 2.15, but I use the one from Rehab Man. It works better. And they have the Voodoo input Kex that you need. So everything else should be in here. Intel, Mousy for the Ethernet, Realtek. The thing is, with the OpenCore, you have to enable each one that you use. You cannot just throw them all in that and then hopefully they're going to inject. No. So that's the difference. So they have the resources. The resources didn't come with it. You have to download the resource if you want to have the GUI that display instead of the text. I don't need the audio. So you can remove the audio if you don't have enough space in your EFI folder. But I need the images here, all right? And it has to be from the 5.9. It cannot be from the 5.8, so it won't work. So they're not backward compatible for some reason. So you look at the OpenCore config, it's the same thing. The ACPI, the Buddha, device property, kernel, miscellaneous, NVRAM, UEFI, and platform info. So ACPI, so instead they're gonna use add. You have to add them in. So the difference between Clover, they make it different. Instead of disable, they use enable. You want to enable, you say yes. With Clover, you want to disable. If you want, then you say no. So the DSDT, do you want to enable the SDT? If you patch the SDT already, then you can say yes. Now the PNLF, you still put all of the power management stuff inside here. The difference with the OpenCore is they have ports on each of the sections. So you have to check these. Any of these things you turn on wrong, it won't boot. It's a little more complex than the Clover. Device property is the same. You can inject whatever you need in here, the same one. and they have the block. Same. Kernel. So now, there's a difference between OpenCore and Clover. You have to turn on every single Kext that you want in the Kext folder. You cannot just dump them all in there. So you have to turn them on. So let's go through the kernel. And the sequencing of this one have to be exact. If not, it's not going to boot correctly either. For OpenCore, you need to go to this website to learn. And also, with all these things are done correctly, we can boot into our flash drive and install. The next video will be the installation and post installation.